Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
I always think that everything you do in life should have some fun element, and I've never had a more fun introduction to a stage.
Well, you guys don't know, I met Steve last night, and this happens every time he walks into a room. It's pretty neat. Pretty neat thing. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Colin Pope. I'm the editor of the Austin Business Journal, and this gentleman to my right is the co-founder of a little company called Apple. Steve Wozniak is credited with being the sole creator of the original Apple hardware, operating system, and circuit board designs. Since then, he's made his mark with other businesses and philanthropy, and he's also known for being just a plain cool guy. Woz, thanks for coming over again. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, we're going to talk about the, sorry to cut you off, I just want to say we're going to talk about the past, the future, innovation, all that good stuff, but what's up with the Woz now? What keeps you busy? What are you up to nowadays?
Actually, some years ago, my last kid finally graduated high school, left the house.
Good.
So I'm sitting here in a big house, 7 rooms. I'm all alone. I wasn't married at the time. And you start saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
Writing books, starting companies with friends. And one of my friends, Kevin Mitnick, he's a hacker. And he would call me from places like Prague, Moscow, Bogota, Colombia. And I started saying, wow, I haven't used a passport in 10 years. I'm getting kind of jealous. And he said, oh, I bet you my speech agent can get you speeches. So I do a lot of speaking now.
Is that right?
Yeah. When it goes down, then I get to do some engineering with my company, Fusion.io.
Tell us about Fusion.io. What is that?
Yeah, Fusion.io is a company that, in the early days, back some years ago, solid-state disks. Most of you have heard of these. We replaced the big mechanical hard disks with a motor that spins a disk with all the data on it. We replaced them with chips. Nice, electronic, pure and simple, little electrons running around. And these boards, these chips are so much faster that they wind up being less costly in the end for the amount of work that they do. This company, instead of making solid-state disks, a little disk drive that plugs in where disk drives go, like everyone else was doing, they put the chips on a board that plugged straight into the computer. And took me back to my days of the Apple II. You plug something straight into the computer, you've got the fewest parts in between, the lowest cost, the fastest performance, easiest to maintain. And I said, oh my gosh, they've got the right formula. I asked all the questions, the benchmarks were there, you know, it would put them on, you know, on express servers, and it would just outperform, you know, other things 10 to 1, 22 to 1. And that means you can have 1/10 as many servers. So people say, where are computers nowadays? We got our little iPhones in our hand, and we got our tablets. Well, we still have our computers, but our computers are out there in the data centers, those big racks of machines. They do the computation, and the machine in our hand just displays it. Okay, so they're still in business. Well, we plug those into those real computers. You wouldn't have heard of Fusion.io because we make boards that just sell into the big data center computers. But it used to be that when you used the internet, all of your data came off of hard disks. That's where the information was stored. Now, probably half of it is coming off of our boards because, I mean, you probably use social networks like Facebook, right? Or do you use Apple or Siri or iTunes or any of those things? Pretty much all those big companies are coming off our boards now, and hard disks in those data centers have kind of been replaced.
So what is your role within the company?
My role was chief scientist, and initially I had a background in chip design. I started thinking about ways to maybe do custom chips, didn't have enough time to fully work on that, and then ways to extend their lifetime and reliability. Tossed out some ideas to the company, and I was right up there with all their best thinkers, but then I got more busy traveling, speaking after Steve Jobs died.
Yeah, right.
Now
right.
I'm what's left.
So speaking of the speaking, what do people want to hear from you? What do you talk about mostly?
Well, you know what? It varies by group. I talk to all different groups in the world. That's the fun thing for me. I get to meet people that are in different walks of life. I might be talking to insurance agents. I mean, I was speaking to jewelers once, and I said, my gosh, you know, I should be your hero. I've been married 4 times. They applauded. I've spoken to health clubs. I've spoken to convenience stores. I spoke to Super 8. So now I tell my wife, if I ever have a choice, to where to stay, a 5-star hotel or a Super 8, please put me in the Super 8.
Super 8's fine for you, huh?
Yeah, because I spoke to them, I'm real loyal. I speak to industry groups, I speak to groups that build parts like chips, groups that build computers, groups that are societies of other types of industries. So it's everything in the world, really.
And you were just in San Antonio yesterday, I think, is that right?
Yes, I was.
Who lured you there?
Now, that was one that I don't do that often. Sometimes I speak to education groups. That one was fundraising professionals, which means the guys who work for museums and all that, and arts groups, charities, and they have to go out and raise funds. You're constantly trying to raise funds from people to stay in business because you're a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And so I spoke about, I have a lot of my own background, being a philanthropist, starting museums, being on boards, starting arts groups, being in ballets even. I have a lot of experience with that, and I have a lot of experience of doing things always for people, always trying to be helpful, not being a company, not being, as a matter of fact, I got into the internet so early, I got my name Woz, 3letter.com, woz.com, but I don't use it because I feel I want to be a nonprofit, so I use woz.org. You know, everybody else wants to be a .com, you know, be special, but not me.
Well, I know.
And yeah, so I do. I've also had a lot of peace activities that are very little known in the United States, but huge amounts of money and effort and first things with even Russia going back to when it was Cold War and they were like the Al-Qaeda.
I know.
Thank you.
I know, I do want to talk about philanthropy in just a minute, but first, number one on my agenda, I think, in a lot of people's minds, because you get to see a lot of neat technology out there. In fact, you get to see a lot of it before we get to see it, test it out and all that.
You know what? No, I don't believe in that.
No?
I used to in the early days, oh my gosh, I had access to all the beta units in Apple and other companies. And now, once in a while, they send me something that's not quite out yet, but I want to be like a normal people. I want to be like the person who has to buy it in a store, go through, figure out which models are available, which aren't, and what the problems are and how it really works. I want to be a real person and know more than the insiders.
Gotcha.
And I got sick 20 years ago of getting beta stuff out of Apple because it would have a bug. Oh yeah, we fixed that one. Bring it down. We'll flash it again. Bring it to every day. You'd have to bring it down and get it updated. I got sick of that.
Right.
I'd rather be like the millions of people and go through the same experiences, but judge what's good and what's bad in technology on my own. Technology is still my life. My most fun thing is just buying unusual gadgets and toys, you know, with smartphones. That's mostly what it is nowadays. I've tried a couple of the smart watches.
Have you? What do you think about the wearable technology and all of that? What do you think about that?
Well, for a couple of years, I've been wearing my little iPod Nano from Apple that you can wear on a watch band. And I wear it every airplane. I plug my earphones in, listen to music on it, and you scroll it with your hand. And I love that scrolling. It's kind of like iPhones and iPads. And I said, oh my gosh, I want the whole iPhone here. But I really want the whole thing, and I don't want a little Bluetooth attachment to it that does some things and not others.
We can't be too
far. And so I'm not
away,
happy.
Huh?
I'm not happy yet. I really got sick of the Galaxy Gear from Samsung.
Right.
I used it with my little Note, and oh my gosh, it just didn't work as nicely and do all the nice things that you want a real iPhone to do, and the screen is too small. You know, the screen for navigation is kind of small even for an iPod, but for a smartphone, I think somebody's going to come up with a formula someday, and everybody's going to say, wow, 30 companies did the same thing, one company did something different and special, and that's the one we're going to go with.
Who's doing some special things out there in the technology world? What are some of the neat gadgets that you are just raving about and you think they're great?
Well, you know, all the special smartphones I like quite a bit.
And you've got a lot of them,
I carry quite a bit. I carry about 10 of them. They're not in my pocket right now. One of the things is Apple is into style. You know, and I'm an engineer. I'm into functionality. Apple comes out with 3 colors of their high-end iPhone. Like, oh my gosh, you got to choose your color, you know, to be one up on somebody else. I'm not going to play that game. I'm no sucker for that. But then again, I have a special plan that's grandfathered on AT&T. And I like to carry a Verizon phone in case my battery runs out or if I need Verizon. And then if I travel a lot overseas, I need an unlocked phone, and that's T-Mobile. So I have to carry all 3 colors anyway. But for the right reasons. I was in Kuwait, and they were talking about how they all got so much money, you know, and normally people come up and say, oh, will you sign my iPhone? I sign a lot of iPhone 5s. And every one of them in Kuwait had 2 of the highest end model, 64 gigabytes, and 2 of them in 2 different colors. So I said, I've got to beat those guys. I got to have 3.
3, right?
But yeah, I like the HTC one quite a bit, and the Galaxy Note 3 is very nice.
Very good.
I love little tricks, and I'm convinced that people do not choose their phones for features. But I love sliding my hand across to take screen snapshots for some time on the Samsung phones. But with the Note 3 now, I say smile, and it takes a picture when it hears me say the word smile. It's kind of these nice little, these are cool little fun things in life.
Let me toss you a big picture question here, because with your Apple I and Apple II, you certainly changed an industry. What industries nowadays do you see as being ripe for innovation and especially technological disruption?
Well, I only see what everyone else sees who reads the newspapers like I do. So, obviously smart cars that drive themselves. Right. It's a big coming thing. Now, we've had, for devices that really help us in life, doing normal things. I really want to ease normal life. When I grew up, I thought engineers make appliances so we don't have to wash clothes by hands. We have a clothes washing machine. Wow, we're going to save people all this effort and energy and give them more time for leisure. And someday, instead of a 5-day work week, we'll have a 4-day work week. That's what I thought when I was young. Now in Silicon Valley, it takes 2 people working full-time stressful jobs just to own a home. Mm-hmm. But so I look at the Roomba that goes around, and vacuums your room while you're not there. What a neat little cheap invention. Well, now I want one that sits out in my driveway and manages to look at obstacles and go around obstacles, and all night long washes my car 1 centimeter at a time. I want little devices. Maybe a robot that would actually learn to wash dishes, but it's difficult to program how to wash dishes. How did you learn as a person? When you were very young, you learned how to hold things without dropping them. And it took you a long time to sort of get how you could hold. And then you were shown a brush and how you could brush it and got the feel of it. It took you a long time to learn. So someday when we have these smart robots, are they going to have to learn like we did? Right. Probably. Well, and I really think that artificial intelligence is the future. I didn't think computers would ever replace the human brain when I was young. I didn't think when I was older. I didn't think when the book Singularity came out. And then I changed my mind. Right. The computers, we've got too many samples where they work like human beings. You speak to it and you get answers spoken back. You have machines that play games on TV and will beat the humans. Too many examples of where they're getting very much like real humans, and it's going to be our best friend someday. Because it's going to know my heart and my soul and how I think. It's going to care about me more than any humans do.
That's a good thing?
Well,
Does it worry you?
It worries me. Worries me more than anything, but it's an unknown, but we can't stop it. You can't stop it from happening. Technology is going to keep going and going and going as far as we can push it towards being smarter and smarter, and eventually we'll probably discover how to build a brain. Right. We don't know how the brain is wired, but we've replaced part of the brain already. It's like you used to ask a brain a big, important question, and now who do you ask? It starts with G-O, and it's not God.
Well, you brought up an interesting example yesterday about the way that a computer can process things as opposed to a human mind. Could you tell us that example again and how you figured, I think it had to do with chess?
Well, yeah, this was an early program in my life, way back decades ago, and it was the Knight's Tour of Chess. And I had a computer that could do 1 million things a second. Good Lord, a human being could never count to 1 million. And if you could, it would take you months. So this machine, 1 million things a second. And the Knight's Tour of Chess, a knight piece has to hit every single square 1 time on a chessboard. Never 2 times, never 0. So I wrote a program that would try making moves. And when it got stuck and didn't have a solution, back up and try something else. Back up and try something else. Nothing came out. I waited 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then finally I went home, I studied the chessboards, and I realized I was going to get every single solution, but it was going to take 10 to the 25th years. Longer than the universe has been around. And what that taught me was no matter how fast a computer is, 1 million things a second, 1 billion, 1 trillion, 1 zillion, it isn't going to match the human brain knowing how to solve a problem, coming up with a method to solve it. So we don't have computers that do that yet, but are we going to get there? A sentient computer, it's called. And I believe we are, because we're on the path. And with exponential curves, the way you predict things, that they kind of advance a portion every year, a portion over the prior year, you never see it happen until you hit the knee of the curve.
Right. Let's try to give some help out the humans out here. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs, and influential people in the room who are focused on taking the energy industry to the next level. What advice might you have for these innovators?
I think we get fooled a lot by what devices are green in terms of pollution and the like. I think energy production is where we can make a difference someday to have cleaner energy production. But the trouble is, it's not going to happen until it's economically advantageous. People just won't sacrifice their lifestyle to have cleaner air.
Right.
And that's a problem. And I'm all for wind power and solar, but they say there's not enough land space, and they're a tiny, tiny bit of our energy needs, and they cost more. And the costing more is a difficult factor because the amount that something costs, this is my own formula. The amount something costs is equal to all the parts that are in it plus the energy to combine them. Each of those parts is all the cost of the parts, the subparts that are within them, the energy to make them, right down to the energy to dig the ores out of the earth. So the cost of something is the energy used, and if you don't have control over the type of energy, it's the equivalent to the pollution. Cost equals pollution. So is a car greener than a bike in terms of pollution? I think this way. Car, $50,000, that's $50,000 worth of pollution. Bicycle, $500, that's only $500 worth of pollution. And then I say, what'd you do with the other $49,500? Your choice to buy a bike didn't change the total production, the GNP. And that's more closely related to energy usage and pollution. So we fool ourselves. We want a higher economy, which is more production, and we want lower pollution.
Right.
So we're going to have to, we have to resolve that. Someday what we want, of course, is just sunlight comes in, electricity comes out. All pure, every car, every vehicle runs on electricity. But you know what? The trouble is, as long as fossil fuels are cheap, I don't think we're going to get there.
You're a great big thinker. Have you dipped your toe into the energy industry at all, or done much there? Do you see much opportunity?
Just a little bit. I mean, I really love some technologies. I love wind if it could only produce more, per land space that it uses.
Right.
Solar thermal is really good, but if it costs twice as much as burning coal, the manufacturing cost all was dirty energy to create the plant that delivers clean energy.
Right.
It's like if you had a solar cell that took 2 joules of energy, of dirty energy to make it, and it only returned 1 joule of clean energy in its life, it's a loss.
Right.
And we fool ourselves. We're looking at the short-term stuff. And I used to think very differently, but then I had a Prius. I had Priuses for 10 years, and I all boasted about how good a gas economy I got. And then the CEO of Chrysler said, but Steve, you can't change the laws of physics. I started thinking in the shower every day for a year to finally kind of work out what does the cost of a hybrid system mean in terms of pollution.
What about Tesla? You like
I love
that company.
Yeah, I love that car.
They're providing some solutions.
The funny thing is, now at Tesla, the cost to manufacture everything is the dirty energy to make it. So it's kind of like you prepaid your dirt to drive around nice and clean and electric, but it signifies our desire to get to the all-electric future.
Right.
Someday everything would be electric and everything would be clean. We're going to have to get there, well, except for nuclear.
Right.
Nuclear. Right. We'll probably go nuclear instead of give up our lifestyle someday. Mm-hmm. So it's sad. It's sad because I grew up so anti-nuclear too.
I want to switch gears here real quick because this was the probably second most popular topic when I was out there asking people, what would you like to hear from Woz? Of course, they want to hear about Apple. And I'm not sure we can really break much ground, on this stage when it comes to Apple. But if you will indulge us, what do you think about the company today? And how long has it been, by the way, since you've been involved?
Apple today? It's been a couple decades since I've been involved.
Yeah.
I was working on the Macintosh and I had an airplane crash. I came out of amnesia 5 weeks later and I called up Steve Jobs and said, I'm going back to college to get my degree, my last chance. The Macintosh has the most creative people in Apple and they'll do fine without me. And I sort of regret that a bit.
Yeah.
Because the Macintosh really wasn't implemented by the rules of computer science. How do you develop computer software? How do you develop computer hardware? They violated all those rules to make a machine that ran a program that looked like the proper computer. It looked like our former computer, the Lisa, a mouse-based system that could handle multiple processes at once and had operating systems that allocated resources. The Macintosh was just a program that looked like it, and it was way too weak. And a lot of rules got violated in hardware and software that hurt it a lot.
Right.
They weren't related to its failure. It failed for other reasons.
Right.
And we had to really make it open to grow up. One thing is Apple always stays closed, but the times that Apple's company valuation has jumped and jumped and jumped are the times we went open. For example, the Apple II was as open as could be, and it made our company. And Macintosh, when it failed, our stock dropped to half, but we worked for 3 years to build a Macintosh market, but we opened it up to where you had slots and other people could design things to plug in, and we made color. And then our stock sort of stayed at that same level forever, and Steve Jobs went away, and he came back. And then eventually we had the iPod, and we went open again. We wrote iTunes for Windows. I've been saying this for some time. We wrote iTunes for Windows, opened up the iPod to the world, and our company doubled in size. 2 companies in one, a huge music company and a huge computer company. We doubled, and then it kept growing, and we had the retail stores, and then we had the iPhone. And every step of the way it grew. But do we write iTunes for Android phones? I've been saying for a year now, no, we should. We should take a lesson from the past, and my gosh, that let us sell iPods to everyone. And there are a lot of people would love our big iTunes music business, the biggest music business in the world. We changed the rules of music.
Yeah.
And everybody would love it on their Android phones. I see Macintosh friends that have Android phones, and I say, what do you do for music? And they say, Google Music. They're stuck. No, we should be selling them Apple stuff.
Is it just the company just doesn't want to? Is that what?
Well, they're talking now like maybe they're considering it,
Yeah.
but maybe they've heard me talking about it for a year.
Right. Well, is there a lack? People say there's a lack of innovation over there. They need to get moving. There needs to be something big that needs to happen. Do you see it that way? Or?
You know what? The funny thing is, there was a long period with Microsoft. Even before they had Windows, they were talking, we're innovating. All they were doing was redoing, they had a lot of engineers redoing software and adding hardware and new versions, but it wasn't special. It wasn't really innovation, but they called it innovation.
Right.
And right now, Apple has got its market very well understood. And you've got to make the product and make it well and keep it right and keep it good and don't confuse the customers and keep them coming back. A very strong basis of loyal customers willing to spend a lot of money for that good experience. And that's what Apple's doing right now. And even when they say innovate, you're not seeing brand new, out-of-the-world things that you didn't expect. You're sort of seeing expectable things. Well, you can't expect those big inventions. More than innovation. Invention, you can't expect those every year. So I've been giving Apple some leeway, but I'm starting to get worried. It's been a little while since a big advance.
Well, that's a good differentiation between invention and innovation. I like that. And people tend to talk about
innovation is like those incremental improvements. A newer iPhone's a little bit faster, it's smoother, a little more resolution on the screen. We increase the screen size a little. Those are not really super innovations that come out of nowhere, like the first iPhone with a totally flat screen and all the rules of computer stuff that made it work.
Right. Hey, help set the record straight. All these movies about Apple in the early days and Steve Jobs, do they do it justice?
They do it a little bit of justice, but we have such strong images and myths about Apple, about Steve Jobs, about things like that our myths really aren't going to be changed much by a movie, and the movie just sort of supports them. Yeah. A great movie will really get us inside and make us think a lot more. We haven't had that movie yet. The movies that are out, too, have been very, very false, largely about Steve Jobs. The recent Jobs movie was not what Steve Jobs was like at all during those early Apple years. And he was really a young person learning what to do and asking questions and not like in charge and directing. He didn't have ideas. He didn't even pursue Apple for the social good. He spoke about it after the fact.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that movie, it is just sort of false all the way, especially regarding me.
Good to know.
It showed Steve Jobs taking me to a computer club. When I was a hero at the computer club, I had given away my designs at the computer club to everyone. I'd helped them build their own. More people than just me had these computers. And Steve Jobs came into town and saw it I brought him down to the club. And I showed him. I was a star. I had this little circle around me of people that always wanted to see my computer that I was developing. And he didn't even say, let's start a computer company to sell a computer. He said, let's start a computer company. Let's start a company to build a board and sell it for $40 to help them build their own. And, you know, and I had all these goals I talked to him about. We were going to improve communication. People were going to be able to type messages that 100 people could read in an hour. I mean, it sounds ridiculously tiny by today's numbers. And I said, we're going to have education where kids learn. They instantly get corrected, and they're going to learn much better and use 100% of their brain instead of 10%. And I drove Steve way up north to Cotati, California. And I took him to a woman that spoke at our club, how she rolled big computer into elementary schools. And everything about computer technology, elementary school kids can understand. There's no higher level math. And I appreciated it. So when we drove back home, I told Steve, we got to give her the first Apple I, the one we manufacture. We got to give her the first one. And he wouldn't do it. So he made me buy it and give it to her.
Is that right? Oh, no.
Yeah.
But
he was young, and he didn't have much money. I had a job.
Right.
So he always wanted to quickly find ways to sell everything I designed. As a matter of fact, we've been selling my stuff, different projects, for 5 years before the start of Apple. And you sort of watch the movie and you think, oh my gosh, just came in, saw this computer, and started a company based on it. No, we had been a company selling my products that I designed for fun for 5 years. And I only built them for fun, not for money. Even Apple, I didn't do it to have a company to make money at all.
What do you do? What do you do? What should entrepreneurs be doing it for?
Well, you know, it's got to be a passion in your heart. You've got to prove to the world something that never got done before. And if you're thinking about this is the way we're going to start a company and get money because I went to business school and that's what you do, that's not enough. That's not enough. You've got to be out there and you've got to be the champion for why is this technology good and why am I doing it better than anyone else has ever done?
You've done so much. It wasn't until I was preparing for this interview that I found out you started a company responsible for the first programmable universal remote control. I could go on, and it's all online for people to see. But what are you most proud of?
I've started a few companies. Some have had good success. That one actually did. But most proud of, I usually go back to the Apple II design. I had done incredible things that were out of the book my whole life, designing things differently than anyone else had ever been taught. But the Apple II had more of those things in it. It's like we had books in engineering that taught you how to generate color for an American television. And it cost $1,000. No computer, no low-cost computer was ever going to have color. And it cost $1,000 with precision parts designed by calculus formulas. And then I thought in my head of a way to take a little $1 digital chip. And if I took the number that was in that digital chip, 4 little ones and zeros, and put them on a wire into the TV, I realized every TV in the world was going to think it was color. But it wasn't in any book that way. It's like I was writing a new book of my own. And I did things, and combining the video memory to the computer memory meant the computer can change a million numbers a second. And it translated to 1,000,000 dots of color on a TV screen. That's animation. And all these great ideas. So I'm proud of the Apple II very much.
Very good.
The floppy disk was another great, just unlike anything ever written about in engineering books. That was another great design. And luckily, I did my best stuff because I had no money and I had to figure out ways to do it cheap with very few parts. And because I'd never done those things before, I had to put pieces together, and I had a very good mind for this. I'd worked my whole life on it. Put pieces together to get to the solution rather than knowing how it's done in the past.
You know, Bill Gates says that he's rooted in architecture. People say Steve Jobs was rooted in design. It sounds like you're rooted in engineering, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, engineering design, digital design, and analog too. I got a ham radio license back to 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did projects in elementary school. I look back to my science fair projects. I said, oh my gosh, those were bigger and huger in terms of work and energy and the parts used than most engineering projects that an engineer ever gets in their life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. I just thought, hey, I'm building a machine that plays tic-tac-toe, and I'm in 6th grade. It's fun. That was my fun thing. So, I never knew. And in high school, I could design any computer in the world in 2 days, and I never thought I'd have a job designing computers.
Right.
Because I thought engineers designed radios, and they used calculus and formulas, and they designed television sets and radar. And I didn't think they designed computers. I thought those were done in weird places called research.
Do you remember where it all started when the first time you touched technology, I guess?
Not exactly. I know I had a crystal radio like a lot of people did, a tiny little part you push together and maybe you can put on some headphones and hear a little radio station.
Right, very good.
You know, the 50 kilowatt AM station down the street.
Right. How about philanthropy? I know you're big into giving back. First of all, why? And then where have you focused your giving?
Yeah, well, I grew up and, you know, there's a time in your life where your personality sort of settles. You get out of high school, you're free, you're on your own, you're thinking for yourself, and you decide, what kind of person am I going to be in life? And you've had a lot of influence. We've all had influences when we were younger of Disney movies and Disney cartoon shows, and the good guys are always out there winning to try to help the orphans, you know, get a baseball field or something. And I just decided that was the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to be a pacifist and not hurt people. I wanted to use my brain instead of brawn. Some people try to show strength by being forceful. And Steve Jobs was a lot like that. And so is Tim Cook. And I really don't like it. By being forceful enough, you can seem to be a leader. I believe leadership should come from thinking and being brains.
Very good.
So I just decided I was going to be good and nice to people. And I didn't want to be ever wealthy because wealth and power corrupt in ways I didn't want to be because I was just too ethical. So I got accidentally wealthy, but right away I just wanted to look around for good people that had good ideas in the city I was born in, San Jose. And I started all these museums and arts groups and things.
Well, I'm
proud of it because I got a street named after me.
Did you? Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, Wozway.
Wozway.
Clever
That's
name.
pretty neat.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. You know, you're credited with inventing the personal computer. Is the day of the desktop or even laptop dead? The personal computer, is that? Mm-hmm. Is that
well, you know, the funny thing is, laptop's not dead. I still see a lot of people like myself that much prefer to use it for a lot of their typing and communication needs and scrolling through and even looking at news items. It's just a much better, larger screen. It's easier to use in the hotel room. But that doesn't mean it's a computer. I'm still doing the same things with it I could do with an iPad that is not a computer. It's a viewport to see things that are out there on the cloud, in the internet, that are being sent to me. And more so, I'm just displaying the email that's being sent to me. But the real computation's being done out there. And I'm displaying, you know, and I'm displaying news items and web pages and videos that are being done out there. So the computer is just out of our hand now.
Yeah.
And it's still a very important part of our life. So it's a computer out there that we sort of rent without knowing it, and then we have the viewport in our own hands that we buy.
Device. I think the word device covers everything nowadays. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so it's a more sophisticated, complicated world than when the computer was all local and it was your own and it wasn't connected to any networks and you just typed in numbers and it added them.
Right.
That was real computer in your hand. Yeah, we're not like that anymore.
Well, you got a lot of successes that we can learn a lot of lessons from, but so many believe that we can learn from our mistakes more so than our successes. So I was wondering, what's been one of the bigger business mistakes that you've made, and what might we be able to learn from it?
Yeah, in the Apple days, every project I ever started was something I had never done before, probably couldn't figure out a way to do it, and everyone was an A+ solution. But in later years, started a company, built that remote control, and it was really great and sophisticated. It was built more around computer ideas, and computer in your hand, like an iPhone in your hand that controls all your TVs, than a simple little, other people came out with cheap remotes that just knew all the codes for different brand TVs. They weren't really computers and programmable. But in a later year, I did try to make a device that you could, for example, put on dogs or put in your car, and the battery would last for a year. You wouldn't have to charge it. And if it ever got stolen or lost, or if the dog got out of your house and wandered off, you'd get phone notifications right away and be able to track down where it was. And that device I couldn't make in the end, engineering-wise. I tried to do the impossible, which I'd done a few times in my life, and it was impossible. Couldn't make it small enough, cheap enough, with a long enough battery life.
At what point, was there a point to where you knew it was impossible, but you still keep working and you're spinning your wheels?
There was a point where I knew that was impossible with today's technology. I actually think about that every night. I even thought about it last night a little bit. I think about it falling asleep. Is there any idea I can come up with? And I'm going to hit on something someday, some way to do that. You know, it probably involves lower power radio technologies and and I'm not sure what yet, but I really want to make it. What we did was we took the project though, and it had uses in the government for like looking for radiation monitors in certain cities. So we just sold it a different way.
I know even in this crowd, there's so many people who are waiting for the technology to catch up to their mind and their ideas. It can be frustrating.
Yeah, because those little underlying technologies that sometimes physicists and chemists figure out how to make chips that have a little more power or do a little more thinking or run a little longer. And a new technology, it makes them faster, it makes something possible that wasn't possible before. And eventually it works its way into the products that we have in our life.
Yep, fascinating
but
how the world
it
works.
Starts at a much lower level and just works its way up. And then companies like Apple, we get all the credit because our name's on the final product. But really it was based upon a lot of work that other people did that made it possible.
You know, there's a lot of people here who would like to have your business success, and that's understandable. But many would also desire the notoriety. All in all, are you glad that with the fortune came the fame, and should we all wish for that?
Yeah, I guess what it is fortune, fame, and what do they say? I forget what the trio is, but most people just, I just want money. I don't know. Fame is the hard one to get. You can't control it. I don't understand it. I was an engineer. I was a great engineer. I wanted engineers to look at my designs and say, wow, how did your brain think of that? You know, just like the way when I hear certain songs, how did somebody think of those words, that poetry? How'd they put it together? It's so amazing. I wanted to be respected by engineers. And why did people come up and ask me for an autograph, decades ago? And never quite understood it. And they want symbols for the things that are good in their life.
Yeah.
So I wound up being one, but partly by accident, and largely because all of the products from Apple were outstanding and ahead of the others for the most part. And people don't like us when our products get stale.
Well, you seem like you're enjoying yourself. I mean, the Dancing with the Stars, Big Bang Theory, you've done some pretty neat things. And
you know what? I always liked not hanging around with CEOs as much as I like hanging around with interesting people that are talking wild ideas or carry unusual things on them. And the Segway, the Tesla, these are just, part of my life. All the little phones I buy and try the little features on them and get to use them, that's my toy. Right. You know what? I used to take my kid to the carnival, and I'd pay $40 to throw darts to win bigger and bigger stuffed animals. I'd pay $80 for the kid to throw darts and throw ping pong balls and win a goldfish. And now we get all these apps. Free, 99 cents, $1.99 free. Our toys as adults are so cheap.
Indeed. The tech scene is looking mighty good. I know it is over there in your neck of the woods and over here in Austin too. Some worry too good. Are you worried about any sort of tech bubble or crash or anything of that nature at all?
I don't worry about them, but I'm not sort of brought up in the Financial Times and the business pages that much. Just as an engineer, I just bought what is coming out that is good and has promised to change life. And I guess the dot-com bubble is the big one we look back at.
Sure.
And every investor felt that this internet was going to become our entire life. And they were right. The trouble is it wasn't going to happen instantly. Right. So too many jumped in. There was a bubble. I was kind of glad when the bubble burst, to tell you the truth, because I live in Silicon Valley. And when the bubble burst, after a few months, everywhere the traffic jams were gone. People started moving out. San Jose lost population for the first time ever in its history. I forget if it was 2003, I think. And you could just drive everywhere, and it's getting crowded right now. That's how I judge things by.
All right.
But I guess it's sort of a worry, but technology can't possibly go away. All it can do is recede for a while.
Sure.
And come back. And I think it affects investors more than it affects users.
Absolutely. What do you think is the hardest stage of a company's life cycle? A lot of people suspect it's fundraising.
There are different companies, and I don't think that Apple, my own experience, is necessarily the best, the most common, normal experience there is.
Yeah.
Fundraising is difficult because a lot of people have ideas. And one thing I like to say is, I don't think ideas are worth an awful lot, because a lot of people around you, almost every little person can come up with ideas just as good as yours, unless you have something very clever. You better look for the engineers. They're taught to solve puzzles their whole life. They will come up with the better, they better be involved in coming up with the idea. And I tell people, don't go raise money until you have a working model, or at least a working presentation that you can interact with your own hands and see how it's going to work in real life. Because we started Apple, we had the computer already built. It was just a matter of bringing it to manufacturing, making it a real product, but it existed. So raising money for us wasn't too hard, because people, even I worked at Hewlett-Packard, engineers looked at this Apple II and said, this is the best product they'd ever seen. So we were going to get, the money was going to come to us by some method. It didn't come by normal methods, because Steve and I were in our young 20s. No business experience. We couldn't talk the business talk that venture capitalists wanted. We couldn't talk the business talk to get into a company to buy us out. But we found an angel. And he just understood what we were, even though we were very young.
Do you make it over to Austin much?
I don't make it very much, but I wish I did.
No? Yeah? What kind of a
it's
reputation?
One of my favorite cities from reputation, what it's about.
Yeah, tell us the reputation that the city carries with you. What do you hear about
it? It is one of the big technology centers actually in the country. You know, they say that in Silicon Valley, something like 48% of the people work in technology, but there are other centers in the country. Austin, Southern Texas, Southern Florida, Boston. There are quite a few, Los Angeles, where close in percentages work in technology. I think the influences are good here, but I also relate, it's really funny, but all of the best engineers at Apple, the ones that were the 1 in 10, 1 in 20 that were just artists, they almost all had music in their background. I was sort of one of the rare ones. I played guitar for 20 years, but I wasn't a musician, classical musician like the others. And here's a city that's known for people who appreciate music, like to listen to it. And that's one of the big attractions of Austin. So I think that's going to bring out a lot of the type of thinking, the creative thinking that new products need.
You know, in many ways, Austin is, especially economically, about where San Jose was, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Would you have any advice for us Austinites over here as we mature our economy, especially our technology sector?
You know what? I judge business and economic progression. I judge it more in terms of how good of the products that I'm seeing that are coming out, products and services.
Yeah.
And I would have to put them in my hand and say, oh wow, look at what these guys in Austin have created, to really give you an assessment, and I'm not ready to.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, we've got about 10 minutes now for an audience Q&A, and the folks here will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there might be a microphone up front. Is there? Yes, there is one up here. So now is your chance. If you've got, we've got just a couple of minutes, but if you do have a question for the Woz, come on up here to the microphone, please.
So I'm live tweeting what you've been saying, and already my friends are retweeting it. So you've already said some interesting things about Apple, energy. One of the things that caught my eye, though, first was your distinction between invention and innovation, like you said. But the other part was we're in energy. So we're all thinking about our intersection, how our energy intersects with consumers and markets and everything else. You're talking about communications catching up to the human brain. And I'm thinking about energy needs to catch up to communications that are catching up to the human brain. What are the inventions, not the innovations, that will help us there, that'll transform or disrupt our lives?
It's very difficult to say. Right now,
maybe the intersection of them, right?
Yes.
Maybe it's the energy storage, it's the renewables, it's
everybody.
It's a whole piece.
Everybody really wants to find renewables and energy conservation. Energy conservation, I don't think is necessarily possible. As I said, we want our economy to be at a certain level, and my formula is economy equals energy equals pollution. And it's pretty straightforward. The only difference is if you can produce energy with less pollution, including the cost of manufacturing the energy plant, then you can really make a difference. The consumer choices can't make a huge difference. So I don't have a good answer, but everyone wants to move towards electric vehicles. It must be the future somewhere out there. It's the right step, the right direction. Everyone wants to put solar panels on their homes. It's just, does it really make economic sense yet? And I think the economy is the driving factor. In other words, does something cost less to produce, we'll buy it. And we aren't going to sacrifice. Now, of course, I say, like everyone else, I'm willing to make a sacrifice, to pay more, to have a lower life, to have cleaner air, and to have, to put in, some of these cleaner plants. But a lot of times we fool ourselves. Building those new plants that are clean is prepaid energy, the cost of building them. Everything you had to dig out and all the energy used to produce them, that polluted too. And we call it carbon credits, and I think it's phony. I'm sorry, but mathematically, scientifically, I think it's, laws of science, laws of physics. It's, we get sold a lot of bad stories. We don't get the true picture. We see the close aspect of, here's some energy saved right here, but we don't talk about the energy that was used to make it.
You're talking about the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Basically.
Yes, I am.
So essentially,
and my example of the solar cell that took 2 joules of dirty energy to make a solar panel that gives back, even if it gives back 2 joules of clean energy, you didn't win.
Well, our last industrial revolution was the convergence of centralizing things at an economy of scale and then distributing them out from that, and that's how we had our telecommunications, and that was really good. But you were at the beginning of
the Industrial Revolution,
distributing.
The Industrial Revolution gave us ways to manufacture more things cheaper. In other words, to use more energy per person and get more product per person out of life. Computers help manage that process, and computers help us use more energy per person in the world. And more energy means more pollution.
Right.
So we really fool ourselves sometimes saying this computer is so economical, it does these jobs that used to take huge machines and cost a lot of energy, but they really, in the end, they just enable us to use more energy in the end.
But really,
by being efficient. Engineering's about efficiency, so we have ourselves to blame, but we always trick ourselves with words.
Well, it's so cool. I got to speak
and
with
I
you
and
here.
I don't hear other people speak in this way. I don't read it anywhere. I think it out for myself, but I have to be honest.
Well, to me, it seems like distributed models is something that you guys really founded what you guys did on. And talking about open systems, like the governance architecture of how you guys approach apps, or that Apple does, is interesting because governance like that generally wouldn't apply in utility space, but in the future, I think somehow it's going to have to. That we're going to have governance in that way. It's going to be select yourself, The
formula I came up with, H equals S minus F. Happiness is what life's about, equals smiles minus frowns. So if you're going to be frowning about how something's wrong and this is wrong and I've got to fix it, you're going to have more frowns in your life, and you're better off telling you, I don't want to frown, I just want to have the maximum enjoyment of life.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great equation. Great equation.
Yeah. Well, I modified that equation to H equals F cubed in later years. Happiness equals 3 Fs. Food, which is a metaphor for the necessities of life. Fun, which is all of our entertainment. And friends, which is people. And when I told this being put into my high school Hall of Fame, the kids started laughing. And I said, oh, there might be a 4th F.
Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed your speaking today. I'm an artist, and I really appreciate your philanthropy, as many artists definitely do. What is it about philanthropy that motivates you to continue to give back to the arts and other things?
I had way too much money for life, and I decided rather than, like everyone else that gets to that position, I wasn't going to let it change me as a person because I liked the person I was. I wasn't going to let it change my ethics and my values. And I didn't want to have that money, and I put it into good things, expensive museums and arts groups and symphonies and things like that in San Jose and other places. And in individuals, I just gave lots of people college educations, and I told them the way you pay me back is when you're successful, you help other people that need help. And that was before the movie Pay It Forward came out. So when that movie came out, everybody said, oh my God, that's Woz. And I love, so I just do it. It's just in my heart. And I want to be a normal, middle-level person and not one of those super wealthy yacht types. That was not a part of my plan, and I don't like thinking of myself that way. Sorry, I couldn't do it. A lot of people get to wealth and they just want to make more wealth and more power, and I didn't.
So what's the most rewarding thing about being philanthropic for you?
Being philanthropic? Oh my gosh, smiling and seeing that things I created are still lasting 25, 30 years later. And that they're doing good, they're benefiting the cultural values of the society, that I grew up with, and of young children at children's discovery museums. Yeah, see that the benefits to society are really good, but more than anything else, what you do isn't judged by what it is. It's the example you set that others may follow later on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Morning, Woz. Thanks for coming in and seeing us today. I wanted to ask your opinion. Did you see the Wall Street Journal this morning? You see that Comcast and Apple are now talking about an IPTV solution.
I've got to be honest, I have never used Apple's stock app once. And I don't read the Wall Street Journal, and I don't read the financial pages, but in the daily news I saw that, yes.
Okay.
And by first I was very shocked because I am such a fan of fairness and internet being so free and everybody's equal that when the FCC voted on net neutrality a couple of years ago, I flew out to Washington, D.C. to be in the audience at that meeting. It was that important to me. And this kind of totally violates it. Certain companies will pay money to make their stuff the distributed stuff that you'll be able to see, and those who didn't have money aren't going to be able to get their videos and things to you.
When you look at the entertainment market, though, in the United States, it seems that it's been screaming out for an IPTV product only as loud as it would be a la carte product. What do you think the barrier to those getting to the market really are? I mean,
I've wondered that for all my time since the start of the internet, and once it got up to broadband levels that we could carry video, why can't I just have a service I subscribe to and it's like cable or satellite TV? I get all the channels. Why do I have to search around? Some's on Justin TV, some's on Hulu. I want to see a sports event. Where is it online tonight? You know, is it in some weird website or is it not online at all? No, it bothered me quite a bit, and it was obvious that the producers that run the things the current way didn't want their business models disturbed. Same as music,
right.
And same as movies. And they try to hold on, you know, to what they had as long as they can and not move with the future. So I do hope that gets cracked through, even if it does take, you know, a stab at net neutrality.
You know, I've spoken recently to people at the FCC. I've spoken to people at very large telecommunications corporations, and I've built a platform that will do this. And what they tell me is it's not that I've overcome the technological barrier. I've overcome the DMA barrier where I don't break the DMA lines, but what they tell me is that big industry will never let us do this because the business model that they have is too successful. So what they say is they'll sell you 50 channels for $70 a month, but they won't sell you one for 50 cents.
Yes, and that's not fair to the innovator and the inventor like yourself. You know, especially young people have ideas. People are coming from little money background, ought to have a chance to invent the new things and not be restricted always by those who have already made it and are in business with their money.
That's why we're in
hey,
America.
I'm on your side.
That's why we're in America, a great place where we can make great inventions come true.
Yeah. Is your technology using multicast or anything?
My technology is called Parrot TV. And what it is spelled phonetically, PAIRIT.TV. And what we do is we pair your device to the network so that we can guarantee that you're the person who's paying for that product.
Do any of you out here have sling boxes? The sling box takes your current subscription satellite TV or cable and then puts it to you over the internet anywhere in the world. And it works as long as you're not in a hotel. Most hotels don't have good broadband.
Well, the other problem with that is it's tied back to a set-top box at your home. If you don't have Dish Network service and you don't have that sling box service that you're paying for, you don't get it.
Yeah. Well, you know, my kids grew up and they were in the more modern, young world, entrepreneur, you know, the computer world. And so they kind of ditched television for television.
The uncoded division.
They watch a lot of TV shows, but only off the internet. They would want that. You know, that's where the market is. That's something that should happen, should be here.
Well, that's what's here. What's here is
sad that it's not, but I'm not the closest person to understanding it because I live in a house that does not have broadband. I'm in Silicon Valley, and I do not have broadband. In all of Silicon Valley, there is one city, I live in it, Los Gatos, that has had one of the most antiquated phone companies all my life. They've had a reputation for it. It used to be GT, now it's right now it's Verizon, and it's one of 2 Verizons in the country that runs no fiber anywhere. Believe me, and so I'm sad. I cannot get broadband. I cannot order an iTunes movie and watch it. So, you know, and there's nothing I can do. It's a monopoly.
You don't have any cellular connection?
My cellular connection at my house in the hills sometimes gets me broadband like up to 7 megabits, maybe even 12. I don't get the super high speeds, but usually it's down at 1. That's not enough.
No, it's not quite enough.
So no, so I'm sort of sad. Nobody takes care of me. There's no regulation, and it's a monopoly. There's one set of wires from one phone company. 50 companies can sell me DSL, but they can only go at that speed.
Do you think that IPTV market will come to fruition in the United States?
Yes, I do, because it makes so much logical sense. I believe in it.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. I really like the way you talked about energy and clean energy, and especially the way that there's hidden costs in the manufacturing of like solar panels and that sort of thing. And you mentioned briefly nuclear with reservations. So I'm just wondering, what do you see as the future?
Well, when we run out of fossil fuels, we don't have enough land space for solar and photovoltaic and that sort of thing, and wind power. And you know, of course, you can always invent new things, but I believe rather than give up our lifestyle when fossil fuels start running out and getting expensive, and they aren't yet, I think people would not give up their lifestyle. They'll go back to nuclear.
What do you think we should really wait until we run out of fossil fuels? I'm not sure that, you know, if there's a technology that can be...
I don't really have a real strong opinion about it, and I don't think that I can change it as long as fossil fuels are very inexpensive. Let's say that solar panels come down and down and down in cost. Larry Page, one of the founders of Google, all of Google runs on solar panels. And he told me that even if they cost zero, it would be a loss. It would be less costly to buy power from PG&E, you know, dirty power. So that gives you a clue that even if they come down to zero, but if they get more and more efficient, could they someday replace the dirty energy? Maybe.
Yeah,
but the trouble is, it has to be the total picture. It has to be the total cost to society.
But if we had a solution that was like nuclear, but it didn't have the downside.
Yeah. The problem is, by the way, as solar solutions get lower and lower in cost, fossil fuel has they can just lower their costs forever almost.
With fossil.
You know, you're just pulling petroleum out of the ground and natural gas and
There's some technology that I've started hearing about recently. I haven't learned a whole lot about it yet, but nuclear with thorium. Have you familiar with that type of technology?
It's supposedly could be a lot cleaner, but it's not proven yet.
Right.
Yeah, and there's other ideas to take these old stored, used up rods from nuclear power plants and put shock waves in them, and maybe you can get energy out that way. Bill Gates would like the government to fund, billions of dollars for him to have a company making that. But but these are unproven and unknown technologies.
Right. But you think as a country we
thorium is basically like nuclear power plants, but much cleaner, much safer. Yeah.
So you think as a country we should be investing money in that, or should we leave it to private industry?
Yeah, I'm sure the country is investing in it, but energy production is not really my business that I follow closely.
Right.
It says all the technologies.
And I'm sorry, we are at 11 o'clock, and I've got to get you guys out of here. Not out of here. There's more show to go, but we've got to continue the show. So, Woz, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Good talking to y'all.
Thank you very much. More to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please, another round of applause.